in, let's do a little bit of review and see if you remember anything that we did yesterday. Okay, and I am recording, and I've checked it, and it is working. Remember, these images are in the course for you to see and review as necessary. All right. You know, there's a couple of them we didn't do, so we'll finish up with those as well. But who can tell me what AGP is and what it does?
Accelerated graphics processor? Or
Yeah, it's a port. What is port, by the way? Think of port in this context as a connection, okay? Because there's virtual ports and there's physical ports. So what we're dealing with is the ability to connect and communicate. So in this case, a slot that you put the card into produces on the back of the card a port that you can connect a device to. So in this particular instance, this is an expansion card, okay? And this is a graphics card. This would go into the AGP right here. And what would it give me? Gives me VGA, which we're going to learn about these today, okay? And it gives me S video and AV, audio video, okay? So notice that there's three different plug types that take video out of the computer, and one down here that connects to your display. So I could not only have a display, but I could use the S video to also connect to a TV. Or I could use this yellow video, which is your RCA plug, which could connect to, say, a stereo or a receiver, something like that, or a DVD player. And I could produce a video out that way if I want to record some video. Everybody good with that? That's AGP. Notice what's on this board. There is a heat sink on this. Why would I need a heat sink on a graphics card? And a big one at that. Well, that's exactly why. Because there's something on this card that can overheat. What overheats on a computer? Processors, chips. Why do they overheat? Well, because they're the ones that are doing all the work. So the more electricity they consume, the more energy they consume, the warmer or hotter they get. All right? Have you ever reached over for a light switch or a lamp cord and felt that it was a little too hot or a little too warm? If you've done that, then what has happened is you have experienced a fault or a flaw. A light switch should never be hot to the touch. If it is, too much electricity is arriving at that location. Too much electricity is producing heat, and that heat is a warning to you. If you touch a cable or a cord from a lamp and it's really hot, there's probably an exposed part of that wire or a defect in that wire causing electricity to travel differently and be more electricity than is needed. Yes?
Okay, so like on my laptop, I have my charger, like the box part of it. Every time I bought it, it overheats. So that's normal for the box part?
Should not be overheating. It should never be too hot to the touch. It can be warm. But if it's hot, then it's not functioning properly. Okay, and it would be a good idea to replace it. There's two things that can happen. It can catch fire or melt down, or it can cause a fire in something else because it's so hot. Okay, like if you left it on and on your carpet and it was sitting there and you went off here and left it there doing its thing all day long, if it got hot enough, maybe the carpet fibers would catch fire. So you have to be careful. Heat and electricity don't go well together. But electricity produces heat. Electrons produce heat. Photons produce heat. So when you have these things, you have to be very, very careful about controlling them. All of the devices that we have in our walls, in our homes, everywhere we go, are designed to control the flow of electricity, just like capacitors and resistors. Okay? And if they don't do their job properly, the one telltale sign is heat. And heat is bad for technology. Heat is never good. If I took you down to the server room where we keep our servers and all of our connectivity, it's 20 to 25 degrees colder in that room than any other place in the building. The reason is those machines run constantly. They run hard. They have fans, but if we keep the temperature of the room down, then they can't overheat. And if they overheat, then we have to replace them. So this is AGP. Notice the pin configuration has to match where you put it in the slot. If it doesn't match, you can't use it. So sometimes when you're buying parts or replacing parts, if somebody says to you, well, I need you to go take this video card and put it in so-and-so's computer, and you get down there and they don't match, stop, because somebody ordered the wrong part. Okay? Now, this video card can go in PCI if it has the PCI pin configuration. The only thing that makes this card work is power and connectivity. So you have power and in and out data. That's essentially what you have here. So if it will fit into a slot, then it theoretically can work in your computer. Everybody got that? Cool. All right. What is the difference between the CPU fan connection and the other fan connectors that you see on the board? Yes, sir.
The CPU fan connector is a smart fan, and it has an extra pin.
There it is.
To switch on and off.
There you go. Excellent. I couldn't have said it better myself. Remember that the fan that goes to the CPU is smart. That means that the computer and the processor control when it's on, when it's off, and for how long. That requires a fourth pin. The other fans are either on or off, and they have 3 pins. Okay? They can be turned on and off, but that's more of a manual function. Yes? Okay, I was just making sure. What did I tell you yesterday was very important to remember about RAM memory slots? Go. And what happens to it? It's erased. It's all gone. And that's because the only thing keeping memory in one of these chips is electricity, power. Okay? So if you lose power, these stop working. If they stop working, everything just disappears. Okay? What else did you have to remember about these? Yes, sir.
They come in either 2 or 4 slots.
There it is. Good. So you're going to put these in pairs. Most of the time, you're going to put these in pairs. I said there are rare exceptions. There are exceptions. What do you do to find out whether you're right or somebody else is right? You check it out. How do we check it out? Open it up, and if for crying out loud, nothing else, take a picture and Google it. You know, you can use Google, take a picture of something, and it'll search for that picture and try to match it up. Sometimes that really works well. Okay? So listen, if you're not sure, every piece of information about every computer ever made is in the internet. It's out there. So you could take this little stick right now and you could say, oh, it says 2 gigabyte and it has PC3 and it has a bunch of other things on it and numbers. You start punching these numbers into your computer and what are you going to find? You're going to find out all about what's in your hand. So you have an advantage that I never had. Okay? If I had a computer go down when I was doing computer repair, okay, and I didn't know what to get, I had to call the company on a telephone. You remember those? You remember and I had to dial the number? I didn't have the internet until later. And even then, when I had the internet, it was brand new. I remember the internet when it had 5 websites. 5. One of them was America Online. Google the rest. See if you come up with it. What were the first 5 websites? I'd like to remember. I can't remember. You know, I do remember this, that the first business to create a presence on the web was pizzahut.com. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you remind me at the end of class, I will show you one of the most fun, cool tools you can use to see what the internet looked like when it first got started. Okay? But are you looking for that? Is somebody looking up what were the first 5 websites? Okay. I remember because I saw a thing that said when Bill Clinton took office, what was that, 1995? There were 5 websites. I'm pretty sure one of them was AOL. AOL, it's America Online. It was much more than a search engine. You know, the other one might have been Amazon. Amazon might have been one of the first 5 because Jeff Bezos was on this, just right away. Yeah, because see, we're talking 95, 96. 94, I had access to the internet. And that's the earliest anybody in the real world had access. Now, it existed well before then. It was called ARPANET, and it was research-based and military-based. But for it to become public and for us to have domains like .com, .org, .edu, .org. I said org, didn't I? .com, .org, .gov, .edu. I think that's pretty much it. The rest came later, huh? .net, thank you, and .net. And nobody ever followed the rules because .com was a commercial. That was anything commercial. Were you going to make money? You were a business, whatever. .net meant you were a network provider, like AOL.net or MCI, which is not around anymore, .net, or AT&T.net. And then org meant you were an organization, okay, like Boys Club of America.org. But after a while, people just started, everything became .com. It's like, oh, it has to be .com, it has to be .com. Billy's Bread Shop in the South Bronx.com. I mean, pictures of my bedroom.com. I mean, people just got away with it. And there wasn't a lot of regulation until later. And that caused a lot of problems. You want to know why? Because what happens if you go, well, it doesn't happen anymore. Darn it, I can't do this. There used to be WhiteHouse.com, WhiteHouse.org, and WhiteHouse.net, and WhiteHouse.gov. Only one of those was for real. Okay? So it was open and free, which means anybody could get anything, call it anything. And then people tried to buy up domain names like Coke, Pepsi, and then they found out that the companies were much bigger than them. Yeah. But I did read where some guy had iPhone.com that he owned, and Apple negotiated with him for that one. They don't use it, I don't think, but they did secure it. Oh, he got paid. Nobody knows how much, but I'm sure he's not complaining. So some people went out and did trolling back before that was a word, and they bought up as many domain names with the hopes that they could just sit back and wait for somebody to knock on their door and say, we'd like to buy that from you. Well, it didn't really, it wasn't like the gold rush. It didn't really work out for everybody, but some people made money. There's no question. Okay? All right. So, we got RAM in pairs. Let's move on. Let's see. What else can I test you on? What can you tell me about the CPU socket that we talked about yesterday? The CPU socket. I passed a bunch of those around. Where'd they all go? Now, what was there? There was something about these. Well, yeah, that's where the chip is, right? Okay. There was something else. How many manufacturers? 2. How many different pin types? 2. Guess what, though? They're exactly the same, only they are backwards. So, these are both LGA, land grid array. That means they're flat, they're little squares. That's what the pin, or the point of the needle, if you will, or whatever, touches. Okay? Now, the pin part is called a PGA, or a pin grid array. When you see the pins on these chips, what's the other side inside the computer? Land grid. Does that make sense? Okay, so they just reversed it. Now, there's a real good reason why you want to reverse it. If you put the pins on this, which is what everybody handles, and you break a pin, throw it away. That could be $400 or $500 right out your hand. This is the most expensive part in the computer. Okay? The most expensive part. Now, by putting land grids on these, there's nothing to break. You can get them dirty, but you can clean that off carefully with a Q-tip and some light alcohol, and they'll work just fine. Don't put them in wet. Computers don't react well to wet. Okay? Nor does electricity. It loves wet because electricity can go in any direction in wet, can't it? You drop a cable in the middle of a lake, the entire lake is electrified instantly. How fast does electricity travel? The speed of light. So it's not like, did you put it in yet? No, forget it. You will know before you can say anything, okay? Which is why people who take baths with toasters are stupid. Okay. I thought it'd be funnier if I said toaster. Okay. All right. Let's learn some new stuff. Where did we go? We did all of this. We did this. We did this. We did this. System panel connectors. Ooh, can somebody decipher what that sounds like? What would be a system panel connector? Yeah.
Is it where all the lights, like the hard drive lights?
Very good. You are doing great. Only this is not the best example, probably. I got something loose hanging out in there. If there were lights, they would be on the computer, right? Yeah. All right. So, like, for instance, the light for the power button, okay, to know that it's on or off, has to be, you have to get a wire to it, right? You have to plug it in. So that's where system panel lights comes in. And there's usually quite a few little spots on the circuit board, depending on what you have to plug in, okay? So that's where those go. All right, who wants to look up what FWH and PLCC? Fwa in pluk. Oh, you don't all have to do it. Look at you guys. You're like, I need too much lunch. What do you get? What comes up when you put FWH in PLCC into a search engine? Oh, please don't make me ask Siri. Yes, sir.
Contains the system BIOS and video BIOS,
All right, we got two things that just came up. BIOS. BIOS. You ready for it? Basic. Input. What's next? Output. What's S? System. What is BIOS? Well, BIOS is one of the most important aspects of our computer. BIOS, well, what is it next to? What is it next to? Nah, look to the right more. The big flying saucer. The CMOS. Why? What does CMOS do? Keeps track of time and date and some very important pieces of data that your computer needs to start up. Like, for instance, the information or code that says, when human push button, start electricity. Okay? In other words, believe it or not, we push the on button, BIOS has to agree to accept what comes next. I mean, something has to happen, right? With a light switch, we turn the light switch on, electricity goes, and it immediately goes to the bulb or the filament or the radio or whatever, and things start. On a computer, it does the same thing, but there's a smarter part of it. Okay? So BIOS has to run. This is like a little mini program in your computer, and what it does, it says, okay, boys, time to wake up. Hard drive, are you there? Good. Flash drive, are you there? Good. CPU working, RAM's working. It checks all the hardware on your computer, but not the software, just the hardware. All right? So think of it like a military thing. It's like a private doing all the legwork, right? And then he comes up and he goes, all good, General. At that point, the BIOS passes off a command to start the first word? Before system? No. It's the most obvious word. What is it that we load on a computer? Operating system. Operating system is software. It cannot run unless it's told to run. And it will not run if there's a problem with your computer. You'll get a message. Well, where's all that information stored? It's stored in BIOS, right here. And then the other one you mentioned was I/O, which we all know is input-output, right? Based on and off, 1 and 0. Okay, so let's go through that one more time. I push the button for the power to come on. What's the first thing to engage? Yeah, what is it called? It's actually software. And what is that software called? BIOS. BIOS has to be first. What happens if your BIOS is damaged? What happens when you push the power button? Nothing. Nothing. You'll be lucky if you even get an error on your screen. Okay? Sometimes the screen will change slight color. Like it'll look like it's sort of partially lit. That's kind of like a dumb light. But if it doesn't go into full mode and you can't read anything on the screen, then you're done. BIOS is something we don't mess with. Kind of like your heartbeat, right? What happens when our heart stops? Okay, what do they do to get us started again? With electricity. We reapply electricity to our heart, and the heart then is our BIOS, basic input-output, right? It's always working. And then the heart starts running and pushes blood around the rest of our body. Next thing you know, oh, my hand is working. Oh, my foot is working. Oh, my brain is working. So it's a lot of ways we can analogize this, right? Okay? Look, the BIOS, even though we don't mess with it, but when we get to operating systems, we'll go in and look at it. You'll be amazed at what's all involved with that. But for right now, all you need to know is the order of startup is power, BIOS, operating system, boom, you're done. Yes, sir.
The BIOS where you can go when your computer starts up and all of those set like your loading order.
That's right. That's right. So your BIOS then also has the ability to say, well, the first place I'm going to look for an operating system is the internal hard drive, which is drive number or letter C. What happened to A and B? Anybody got any ideas? What happened to A and B? They came before C. Well, A used to be the first one. That's why it was called A. And it was your floppy drive. So we don't have a floppy drive anymore, do we? So we skip A. We go to B. That was another floppy drive, only bigger. We skip that. We go to C. That's our new hard drive. Nobody ever bothered to relabel everything. There will never be an A and B again, but we have a C drive. So C drive is first, but you don't have to make it first. D could come first. Let's say you always want to start up your computer from a CD. I don't know who does, but you could. I guess that means you could take the CD and walk away and nobody'd ever be able to run the computer. But you can also tell it to look, if one doesn't work, you can tell it, okay, if that doesn't work, try this. If that doesn't work, try this. If that doesn't work, try this. Okay? Get your head off your hand. That'll help. All right. Okay. You know what happened to the last person who fell asleep in my class? I came over there with a marker, and I just drew a little happy face on their forehead. Do you want to find out? Okay. So, by the way, as a helpful tip, if anybody ever starts feeling tired, don't feel bad. If you need to stand up, if you need to move around in the room like Amir's doing, do it. You're not going to bother me. I just would rather have you awake. And I get it. Listening to me, I would fall asleep. I get it. Okay? I'll try to mix it up a little bit, and if everybody starts falling asleep, then we'll do something else. But don't do that to stop me. Okay. All right. So did you get a breakdown of what the FWH and PLCC actually mean? Because they're really not important for you to memorize. But you should know, if somebody said, what is this over here, you should say what it does. What? Yeah. Firmware hub. Firmware is not software, is it? There's a difference. What's firmware is like what, a brick? And software is what? Like a marshmallow? Firmware simply means that it is software you don't mess with. It's software you don't mess with. You don't install it. There are times when it needs to be reinstalled or fixed. We'll talk about that in OS in Mod 2. Firmware is software on a computer you don't have access to. Is everybody good with that? Sometimes you'll see something on your screen that says you have a firmware update. Like you buy a new hard drive and it needs update. It's going to do that automatically, and it's just new software to make it run right. But you don't get to touch it, mess with it, change it, and stuff like that. And the PLCC? That's why I wanted you to look it up. Is that not the most ridiculous thing? Plastic, leadless chip carrier. That's like calling a purse, you know, a VRFJ, a vinyl receptacle for junk. Now, that's not a shot on the women. I know that there's guys that carry purses too, so, you know, no big deal. That's called, is that called a what? Is that a merce? Is it a merce? It's called Mess With Me, and I'll show you. No. All right. Let's move on. Southbridge and Northbridge we're going to talk about in a little bit, but they are processors, right? They are assistant processors to the president. They're like vice president to the president. Who's the president? CPU. Got it. Serial port connector. Serial ports are devices that work on a serial connection. Now, we haven't talked about that, so keep that in the radar because that's coming. There's parallel and serial. I'm going to talk about them in terms of highways and roads, and you'll get the idea of what they do. USB is what? What does USB stand for? Universal Serial Bus. Okay, now the universal you understand. The serial we're going to talk about, but let's talk about the B, bus. I'm going to take a moment to talk about bus. Okay, and I'm going to use this circuit board because of its contrast. So you can see, when you look at this, I want you to imagine that you're up in a satellite and you're looking down. You ever done Google Earth? And you know how it kind of zooms down and you start to see this? And as you get closer, it becomes what? Streets, buildings, and so forth. These lines, believe it or not, they are actually gold on green, not gold on gold, but they're gold on the green there. If you look closely, they're roads. They connect the devices. That's what electricity flows over. Okay, that's why we call it a circuit board. Because when you connect one point with another point and you pass electricity, you create a circuit. That's from middle school science class. Okay? All right. We have open and closed circuits, right? These are all closed because if they were open, all right? So we're not going to mess with that. So because these are roads, what do we as humans put on roads? What cars? What else? Bikes? What kind of vehicles? Buses, thank you. Which carries more, a car or a bus? A bus does. Now, I only say that so that you can try to relate to what I'm about to tell you right now. Okay? So, if I'm driving down I-85 in a car, okay, during rush hour, I'm not going very fast, am I? What's that thing over on the far left, though? That's kind of a special lane, isn't it? So, we're just normal, everyday people driving in a car all by ourselves. We don't get to use that, do we? But if we had more people in our car, we could, right? And we could go faster. So data traveling on a computer is no different. Most, if not all, information travels down that highway normally, back and forth every day. All of us, we go home, we're data going home. We come here, the data comes here. We're data. If I want to get here quicker, I got to choose other paths, don't I? Can I take the train? And I don't have to worry about traffic now, do I? Because there's no traffic for trains. That's going to be a high-speed bus, right? Bus is a term we use more for the road than the device that's on it. So on a computer, when we say bus speed, it's the ability for it to get from here to here in how long? The shortest amount of time is the speed of light. Anything else is slowing down. But there's another way to look at it, okay? If I take everyone who drives a car and put everyone in a bus, will I have more or less vehicles on the road? Less, but I'm still carrying the same amount of data. It's packaged differently, isn't it? We'll talk more about that too when we get into networking, how we package data for efficiency. So the bus speed is dependent upon the ability to go from point A to point B as fast as possible. So when we buy devices and it says your bus speed is blah, 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 let's say your bus speed is 200 and the other person's bus speed is 1,000. Who wins? The 1,000. Just like everything else, if the number's bigger, it's better in computers, okay? If I say you can have 2 gigabytes of RAM, I'm going to give you 20 gigabytes of RAM. Who wins? 20. 20 trumps 2 every day. Oh, there's that word again. What about clock speed? You ever heard of clock speed? It's a really weird one because if I look at a clock, the speed's always the same. Clocks don't go faster or slower. How about your heart rate, though? Can your heart rate go up and down? But they didn't call it heart rate speed. But you know what? Everything in the universe vibrates. Did you know that? I learned that late in life. Everything from the smallest quark or the smallest known particle in the universe to everything in the world, everything in the universe moves. Everything is in motion at some point. So the computer is in motion too. How many of you have had a quartz watch? Anybody have a quartz watch? Quartz is a crystal, right? And if you could zoom down to the level of the quartz, what would it be doing? It would be vibrating at a locked-in set of cycles per second. Your processor functions on a metric or a measurement we call clock speed. And we put that in a term of vibrations called hertz. Speakers, right? You can go from like 20,000 hertz to 20 hertz. Which one's the low sound? 20. Which one's the high sound? 20,000. The faster something vibrates, the higher the pitch. Got it? The faster a processor vibrates, the faster it is clock speed, the faster the computer counts. Does that make sense? Is everybody good? My job's to put it in terms you can understand. I could talk techie, but you'd walk out of here just as bored as you possibly can be. Clock speed determines how fast your computer can compute. That means it can add 2 plus 2 7.5 billion times a second, or more, or less. So when your computer is slow, it's probably not the processor. It could be a whole lot of things getting to the processor and getting out of the processor, which means I need to be at Braves' new stadium. I need to be there in 2 seconds. Not going to happen, right? Okay? But if I had choices of how I could get there, car would be my last choice. Helicopter might be my first. Okay? Because catching a flying jet plane is a little hard. That would actually get me there faster. And Scotty's not working anymore, so he can't beam me over. Fun fact, the actor who played Scotty had his ashes spread through space on one of the space shuttles. That's pretty cool. Okay, so when we talk about bus, no matter where you see the word bus, okay, in this case, USB, Universal Serial Bus, that refers to the ability and speed at which it can transfer data. Its ability or capacity and speed to transfer data, right? You ever watch commercials on TV at the very end where they read all the cautions and everything at about 100 miles an hour? You know? Blah, 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 blah. Okay? That's like a burst of information. Okay? That's high clock speed, isn't it? I mean, that's really fast. You know? Have you ever listened to something on your phone where you could change the speed to make it sound like I listen to podcasts, and sometimes I put them on 2x instead of 1x, and I hear them in half the amount of time, but because of the way that people talk, it doesn't make a difference. They just sound like Alvin the Chipmunk. But I still get the information, but I get it faster. So speed creates faster access to information, but it also has a side effect. Okay, this is not your brains on drugs. We've already seen the egg in the fry pan. But what we've also heard is speed kills, right? So what is the side effect of really, really fast computers? What's the side effect? Overheating. I love how you transferred that to his mouth. That was so good. See, that was speed of light, man. Okay, heat is a byproduct of speed on a computer. All right, so header simply means that you have a plug. Now, remember that computer I held up here? What did it have on the front? What's it have on the front? You see all those USB plugs right there? All those ports? There are wires coming from the back of them, and they plug into the USB header. Okay? A header is like a manifold. I don't know if you know about cars. I don't know if you know about things like that. A header simply, you see the power outlet down here that has like 5 or 6 plugs in it? That could be a header. Okay? Because it's one device that holds up to 5, 6 other devices, right? That's kind of like, that's what a header is. So if you look at the USB header, you're going to find that you have a bunch of different places you can plug in. That needs to match the number of ports on the outside of your computer, right? Which is why a lot of people buy their motherboard and their case at the same time. Otherwise, you could buy a motherboard that has 2 headers and a case that has 35 ports on it, and you can't hook them up. Right? Now I'm going to tell you a fun fact that you can start thinking about. Not a fun fact, but a fun fact. No, not a fact, but a true. No. Never mind. I'm going to edit that. No. You know what your final project is in this class? It's to build a computer from scratch. Research all the parts. Figure out if you're going to have a Hemi, Demi, Semi engine in it. If you're going to have super graphics. I wish you could, and I wish you could afford it, but you're going to get a budget. You're going to get a budget. Some of you got, no, you're not. This is virtual. Okay, relax. But you are going to take a computer apart and put it back together again very soon. We're going to go have a lab, and you're just going to get one of those things, and you're going to open it up, and you're just going to start pulling everything out, and then you go, where the hell does this go? And you're going to have to put it all back together again. Okay? All right. Jumpers. Not clothing. Jumpers are single silver pins that stick up from the board. And then I slide little plastic couplers over 2 at a time. And when I do, I create a circuit. So instead of them going up to nowhere, if I put one of those jumper caps on, then the circuit is created. It comes up one, down the other, circuit's created. Those jumpers send information to computers as to how much voltage does the hard drive need. Should I enable on-off safety features? I mean, it's weird stuff like that. Okay, so that's what those are. We'll look at them when we take them apart. SATA, okay, RAID. Remember we had down here ATA RAID, right? Rapid array of independent drives. If you have a device that you have multiple drives, if you have SATA connections, you use this one. If you have ATA connections, you use this one. Integrated circuit is another name for what? Integrated circuit is the official name of anything we call a chip. Anything that we call a chip, even a CPU, is technically an integrated circuit. Think about those 2 words. Circuit, we know, means what? It means we're passing. Okay, let me give you a way to think about it. The entire city of Atlanta. Take away all the street lights, all the stop signs, all the yield signs, and what do you have? Chaos, right? That's open. That's a non-integrated circuit. Once I put in stoplights and stop signs and yield signs, I control when something goes and stops and goes, right? That is an integrated circuit. It basically says green on, green on, green on, red off. Green on, off. Remember playing, what was that game? Red Rover. Is that too old for you guys? Okay. There were probably other versions of it where everybody would be there and somebody would turn around, they'd say something, and they would start running, and then they'd do something, and then they'd stop. Red light, green light. There it is. All right, there it is. Okay. So anyway, that's what we're talking about. That is the process of a circuit. That is the process of a computer. For instance, I'm saving a file. I'll slow down the downloads for a second. That ever happened to you? You don't realize something's going on. You're saving a file. Oh, I've got this download coming, and then you decide to open up 3 other applications. There's a hierarchy in a computer. So you're downloading, and everything's looking good. Then you start opening up these other applications, checking your email, Facebook, everything, and you're going, this download is taking forever. Well, yeah, because you just took the brain that was focused on doing one thing and told it to do 5. How well do you do under those circumstances? You know what studies have shown? This is how studies that they have done on humans, okay, tell us about ourselves. If you sit down and focus on one thing, let's say practicing the piano, that's 100% of your time is on that piano, right? You're focused. Let's say you're checking your email and practicing piano. You would say it's probably 50-50, right? It's 40-40. Wait a minute, that doesn't equal 100. Right, because there's something lost, and that's the transition time and the re-gearing up. I'm practicing. Oh, crap, let me check this email. Oh, I got to back to practice. Oh, I got a phone call. Yeah, the actual time on task, 40%, but 20% is lost shifting gears. Now, let's say you have a third thing, somebody talking to you about something unrelated over your shoulder. Phone call, piano, talking, right? It's not 33 across the board. It's more like 20-20-20. And so the more things we take on and juggle at one time, the less efficient we are juggling anything. Everything suffers. So that's why when I have a surgery, I give a sheet of paper to my surgeon and says, you will turn your phone off and give it to somebody else. I'm kidding. The last thing I want is that, please count backwards from 10. And I hear out of the corner of my ear, let's see, appendectomy. Siri, how do you do an appendectomy? And I'm like, no. I'm out, okay? I don't want my surgeon getting his degree from an online university. Scary, right? No, they can't. It's against the law. But I mean, think about it, right? The next time you go into the office with your doctor, you start looking around for those degrees, and it's like Bellevue Hospital College of Medicine. I don't know, what is that? Oh. Yeah, sometimes even the best ones aren't any good anyway. Are we all awake now? I try to change the subject, get you back engaged again. I know it's tough. It's after lunch. I failed a class in college once because it was after lunch. If you repeat that, I'll kill you. Okay. 1394 headers. That's not 1,394 headers. 1394 refers to Firewire. The reason they can't call it Firewire, I love saying that, is because somebody registered that name as their proprietary name. Somebody that rhymes with grapple. And so everyone else had to call it 1394. That's Firewire. That's a high-speed wire connection that pretty much is dead now. Because you know what? USB grew up and became faster. USB-A and now USB-C. What happened to B? Well, whether you knew it or not, USB-A is A and B if it's used on a printer. Think about a USB cable for a printer. It has two different plugs on it. One is square and one is flat rectangle. They're normal USB. If a USB has to send information to another device, it has to be B. Okay, anyway, we'll see that when we look at the cables. SPDIF. SPDIF. It's an acronym, okay? It's a proprietary port that you probably won't find anymore. And it's from Sony, and it's an audio input. It was a special digital, one of the very first digital audio connections, and we don't use it anymore, okay? But it's on our image, at least this one. And this is an old circuit board. I'm not going to kid you. This is not state-of-the-art, brand new. We'll look at that one maybe Thursday or something, okay? But you know what? We're looking at a board that resembles what you're going to take apart and put together. That makes more sense to me. All right? If I showed you one that we have today with all these features, and you went to the other one, you go, what the heck is all this old stuff? Well, I want you to know that too. Plus, this is a very common board you're going to find in so many computers in business right now. Okay? So many. All right. And finally, CD in, compact disc in. That's where you would connect a cable that would connect to your CD player to produce the audio. Okay? Power and data run over different cables, but the audio has to have its own input. Again, it goes into the circuit board and it's produced through the audio processors that are built into the board and then sent to that little tiny 10-cent speaker that every computer comes with until you're smart enough to put something real. And if we add it to the computer, it's called a who? No, that's okay. I didn't know what you said. What do we, when we add a printer, when we add another monitor, what do we call those? Accessories is good. What? They're output and input devices. Altogether, they're called peripherals. Remember peripheral vision, peripherals. Okay, they're added on. Okay, the computer can't see them unless he looks out of the corner of his eye. Okay, peripherals. All right. Any questions about this? We're going to move away from it now. So if you have any questions, now's a great time.
What is the integrated circuit? So you said compared it to street lights. So what is it?
Okay, integrated circuit, that's a chip. That's something that processes information. It might be audio processor. It could be a compression processor for video, and it's on the circuit board. North bridge, south bridge, CPU, and anything else is called an integrated circuit. Yes? Thank you. I didn't realize I had skipped over that. Don't forget where this picture is. Why? Yes. And also, you will see it again towards the end of the module. Enough said? I hope so. Hope you got my drift. All right. Now, I mentioned that we were going to take a look at the ports on the back of a computer. Here we go. This is really an old one. As I go through this, I'm going to tell you what's obsolete, but you will find them on the computers that you will be taking apart and putting together, which is this one down here, okay? So you can see that it's very close, not perfect, but very close to what you see on this one, okay? And again, this is up here for you to come and look at whatever you need to do. I also have a Big Mac down there, in case you're hungry. PS2 keyboard port, PS2 mouse port, okay? These were developed in the 90s to make it easy for people who bought devices. Remember, we did not have go buy a computer and take it home until the 90s. The idea of having a computer at home in the 80s meant you pretty much built it yourself. Heathkit, even the early IBM and Apple too, were not that you built them, they were built for you, but they were not for the shy person. You had to be a little adventuresome to buy one, spend that kind of money, and figure out how to get it to work. So what they did is that they created two separate ports, one that would control the data in and out for the mouse, one the data in and out for the keyboard. Okay, they're both input devices, right? Okay, but even though they're input devices, the signal does travel. So look, why green and purple? So people wouldn't plug the wrong one in the wrong place. Now, it's not that they wouldn't work. It's just that back then, everything was hardwired. There was no integrated circuit that could say, hello, what are you here for? Oh, you're a mouse? No problem. I want you to go over and have a seat in the third row over here, and the bus will pick you up in a minute. That's how today's works. Everything's USB, right? USB is smart. Do you notice that when you plug in a USB device in your computer like wakes up and goes, whoa, what the heck was that? Yeah. What are you sticking in my backside here? Is this a hard drive? Are you trying to say, it does something, right? Because they talk to each other. You put your microphone or your headphones in, it doesn't do anything. That's a dumb plug, right? But a smart plug will negotiate. A smart plug says, okay, I know you're there. Now, what is your business with me today? Okay, so, I'm a USB stick. I'm just here to transfer files back and forth. Okay, good, because I'm not letting you do anything else. But if I plugged in a printer, that cable would say, I'm connected to a printer, and I need access to a port so that the computer can send information to me. That's a whole different set of instructions and negotiations. So the USB plug was the first smart plug we ever had. And it changed, it revolutionized everything. Because back in the day, we would plug a printer in with something called a parallel port, which is on these. I don't see one on here. Serial. I don't think so. Anyway, it looked a little bit like this, only bigger. Okay? I'd plug in my printer with this like 12, 15 pin, 18 pin plug, and then I had to do all the work. I had to tell the computer to go, would you please go check and see if this printer is connected correctly? No, I don't see anything. Try again. Nope, I don't see anything. Try this port. Nope, try that port. Nope, try this port. Nope. Oh, there it is. You need software. Where do I get it? Computer says, oh, if I know, go find it. Nowadays, when you plug in a printer, what does it do? If it needs something, it goes on the internet and does it for you. Smart. Okay. All right? I've said hell twice. I hope I'm not offending anybody. It just means I'm having a good time. Let's go to the left. There's our subdiff ports again, right? SPDIF, right? You won't find them anymore because that plug and that technology has been replaced with optical and USB. And what's the big one that takes care of it now? HDMI. Very good. Serial ATA port. This is a serial ATA plug, external hard drive, not one in the computer. Let's say I want to plug one into the back of the computer and I just want to leave it there. This is the same plug that's inside the computer on the motherboard, but I got one on the outside in case I want to put a drive on the outside. I can add on. This is Legos, man. I can just keep adding on. USB 2 ports. Look at them all, right? What is USB 2? What's USB 1? USB 3? Guess what? I need you to make it a point to figure out the differences between them. All right? You don't have to do it now, but make a note to yourself. Hey, check out the differences between USB 1, 2, and 3. There's a difference. What do you think is the difference, the most obvious difference between 3 and 1? 3 is faster. Okay? I'm going to give you another one. 3 It's a different color. It's blue. But it might not always look blue. So if I pull up these little computers over here and I take a look, there's no blue in there. But if you look really close next to the little trident, which is kind of the three-pointed fork, right? That is the USB symbol. What else does it have? What else does it say there? SS. Super speed. That's another way we designated USB 3. You have USB 3 ports. All right, remember what I said about moving up and down the highway? USB 1 was in a car. USB 2 was everybody got out of their cars and got on a bus. Now we have lots of room. Nobody slows down. Everybody goes, right? USB 3, you own the road. Nobody's on the road. Okay? It's you. You can do anything you want. You can walk, or you can put 200 people in a car, but you own the road. Boom. No obstacles. Theoretically, right? Okay? So go look up and see what else you can learn. All right. Center subwoofer, side speakers, microphone, line out. Those are all audio, right? They're different, aren't they? And they're color-coded, aren't they? They still are. So you might want to memorize which one's which color. It's tricky. You can always look at the real device. Over here is rear speakers and line in. A line in is from an audio device to put audio into the computer. Not that you guys have them, but there was a time when we had cassette tape players, record players, Walkmans. Yeah, we thought we were cool, man. Walkman, man. Just put a tape in, headphones. You know, it's like holding 6 iPhones. Okay? But it was the cool thing. You know, and people were still wearing them on their arm, and they were, you know, they were still jogging with them, right? Well, we would take a cable that would come out of that device, like where you would plug your headphones in, and that cable would transfer over to here, and now the audio would go from that device to the computer. Got it? Okay. Then I could do all kinds of things with it. Line out does the opposite. After I'm done processing and I've done all my mixing and I've created all the new music, I want to get it onto a medium that I can share. Well, back before we had easy to create CDs or USB or any of that stuff, or let alone streaming, we had to burn it out or off record. So I could plug in my cassette player with a blank tape, tell the computer to start playing, push the record button on and the audio signal would travel. Okay? The rest of it is for surround sound. Wi-Fi antenna in. Yes, folks, Wi-Fi hasn't been here forever. Okay? I'm getting very warm here. I'm sorry. I have to take my coat off. Oh, Miss Ramaswamy. 70-5. Oh. Okay. We are coming down. Okay, so Wi-Fi antenna in simply means that at one point I could buy an external Wi-Fi connection, and it was literally an antenna, but also there was probably a board that I had to put in my computer, which is an expansion slot, right? Okay, nowadays, where are the Wi-Fi antennas? They're all built into the computer. All right, over on the right-hand side, RJ45 LAN port. Okay, RJ45 is Ethernet. You've heard that term, right? Ethernet cables look just like the old-fashioned phone cables, only they're bigger. The telephone cable has a different designation. RJ45, okay, is for the Ethernet. You get to figure out what the RJ blank is for telephone. IEEE is the International Engineering something or other. Anyway, that's a group that develops standards for the transfer of data. 1394 is Firewire. That's a Firewire connection port. And last but not least, your serial port or VGA port. Okay, video graphics array. Video graphics, VGA. It's still a standard. Can you believe it? It's an analog standard in the digital world. And we still use it. It's kind of weird, but we do. It's still very popular. It's on the projector above you. It's on every one of your laptops. Okay? It will soon be replaced with HDMI because HDMI is superior and it's digital. Do you have any questions about any of these? Remember, this is here for you to review. Or you can print it out and make notes, whatever you feel works best for you. Okay? All right. How much can you handle? Not too much? I'll tell you what. If you promise to do something and not just shoot the you-know-what, I'll stop, but I want you to use your time wisely because we're almost done anyway. What I'd like you to do is look something up that you don't know enough about. Ask the question to the computer, like, okay, what is this IEEE thing? What is that? Why 1394? Or I see ATA and SATA. What do they stand for? Why is there an, and by the way, there's a PATA too. And what is that? Oh wait, he said P was something and he said S was something. Can you remember what those are? If you do this on your own right now for the last 10 minutes, you'll gain much more than I can do talking to you right now. All right? You good? There's no homework. Remember me? No. Except for the questions. Remember, every day, why don't you pop in? You see somebody's question. If you're not ready to put your own up and you can answer them, go ahead and get that off the checklist. And then maybe something that somebody asks will kind of make you want to ask a question. All right? Good. And with that, I'm going to stop the